Good, okay. My name is Colin, and this talk is called Coaching Outside the Agile Team, which is a really kind of boring, not very exciting title. So I've given it the subtitle, How to Defeat Your Agile Enemies, just to make it sound a bit more dramatic. In the very unlikely event that you are tweeting about this talk, please mention tech at Treatwell, and please only say nice things, nothing bad. Okay, so before I start, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me. I'm an Agile coach. I work for a company called Treatwell. At Treatwell, we are building the world's leading hair and beauty marketplace. So we're a little bit like Airbnb or Deliveroo, but instead of booking holiday apartments or ordering takeaways, at Treatwell, you can book your hair and beauty appointments. So we connect millions of consumers with tens of thousands of salons. We operate in 11 countries across Europe, including here in Lithuania. So straight after this talk, you can download our app and book your next manicure or massage or haircut or whatever you're into on Treatwell. Our technology team is based in London, but also here in Vilnius. Some of the guys are here today. And which is great, because I get to come here all the time, and I love it here in Vilnius. I'm originally from Scotland, which is why I have this very strange accent. I hope you can all understand me. Scotland looks a lot like this. It's incredibly beautiful. But I've spent the last 20 years working in and around London. London looks like this. It's okay, I'm not bitter, I'm over it, I get to come to Vilnius all the time, everything is fine. And what I'm really interested in, what fascinates me, is the way that some organizations are really successful with Agile, and other organizations find it much more of a struggle. And I'm really fascinated as to why that's the case. And what I've come to realize is that one of the big factors in why some organizations are so successful and others aren't is organizational culture. Wow, standing room only, massive crowd, it's amazing. And I think it's all about organizational culture. So I spend a lot of my time thinking about what we as Agile practitioners and Agile coaches can do to influence our organizational culture for success with Agile. But I guess I should say what I mean by success with Agile, right? So and I think to answer that question, I should talk about why. Why do we do Agile? Why do we try to be Agile? What is it that we're trying to achieve? And my take is this. I think it's really very simple. What we're trying to do, the reason that we like Agile, is that we want to build useful, valuable products. We want to build great stuff that we're proud of, and we want to ship it to our users sooner. Very simple. And also, I think crucially, really importantly, we want to be happy at work. We want to enjoy what we do. Hopefully this makes sense. And those of us who are old enough to remember a time before Agile was such a big deal, you will know that not only in those days did we absolutely fail to achieve any of these things, we didn't even try. These were not our aspirations. These were not our priorities. These were not things that we focused on. And even today, we succeed to varying extents. Some teams do really well, some teams find it more of a struggle, but I think for all of us, this is what we aspire to. This is why we're in this, and this is what we're trying to do. Understandably, as Agile teams and Agile coaches, we focus most of our attention and most of our energy on our sphere of influence, which is the Agile team. And we can make a bunch of progress getting better as Agile teams. So we can follow an Agile framework like Scrum. We can adopt practices like TDD and continuous delivery. We can even modify our own behavior. We can learn how to deliver more iteratively. We can collaborate better and just generally be more awesome. And that's all good. It's great. But sometimes stuff gets in our way. Other things get in our way. And when I say things, what I really mean is people. People get in our way. Okay? So what this talk is all about is giving you some tips on how to identify those people who get in your way and what you can do about it. So most of the principles, the 12 principles behind the Agile Manifesto, talk about the team. They talk about the team doing the work. So we have principles around welcoming change. We have a principle around simplicity. We have a principle around reflecting and improving the way we work. These are all about the team, right? They're about the team doing the work, except for one. So one of the 12 principles says, build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. And this principle is unique in that it talks about the wider organization and not the team doing the work. And a group of Agile practitioners, they recognized the unique importance of this principle and decided to create a movement, and they called themselves the 12 Principalists. This is kind of annoying because when you read the list of the 12 principles, this one is actually 5th in the list, but they called themselves the 12 Principalists. It bothers me, but you know. If you can get over this trauma, like I have, you can go to 12thprinciple.org and you can read what they say, and you can sign up to be a 12 Principalist. It's good stuff. You should do it. And one of the really interesting things that they say at 12thprinciple.org is that regardless of methodology or surrounding organizational structure, a delivery context of motivation, trust, and empowerment is vital for success. However, such a context is not an effect of adopting an Agile process, but a prerequisite. This is really powerful because what they're saying here is that to be successful with Agile, you first need to have the right environment. You will not gain the right environment by adopting Agile. Okay, really powerful stuff. And if we accept that to be successful with Agile, you need the right kind of environment, then surely it follows that we, as Agile practitioners and Agile coaches, should focus a lot of our time and energy and focus on creating the right kind of environment. This is where we should put all of our energy, right? It's a prerequisite for success. Okay. Bad news, this is not easy. This is incredibly difficult. So to create the right kind of environment, an environment of trust, motivation, and empowerment, you might need to change your company's culture. And that is hard. You're certainly going to have to change the way that people behave. And some of these people whose behavior you're going to have to change are people outside your team. So these are people that you don't have access to spend time with every day, people that are really hard to get hold of. And sometimes these people are senior and influential and important in your organization. And sometimes these people have really strong, deeply held opinions. And sometimes it can feel like they have goals that aren't aligned with yours. So you've got to change the behavior of people that you don't get to spend much time with, who are senior, important, and opinionated, and where it looks like their goals aren't aligned with yours. This is not easy, right? This is incredibly difficult. And this is where I have to make my big confession. I don't have all the answers. I'm sorry if I've missold the presentation, but you're here now, you might as well stay. I don't have all the answers. Every situation is different, every company is different, every team is different. But what I did do to prepare for this is I interviewed a bunch of different Agile coaches, and I looked at everything they said, and I looked at all my experience working with different Agile teams in different environments in different size companies, and there were some very clear common themes. There were some things that came up everywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to 4 characters. We're going to meet 4 characters today, and each of these characters represent types of people who, left to their own devices, can do or say things that will make life difficult for your Agile team. These are the Agile enemies that we're going to learn how to defeat. And for each of these characters, we're going to learn how their behavior can impact you. I'm going to talk a little bit about things that we normally try in our teams to deal with them. And then I'm going to give some tips for how we can try to tackle the problem a bit more effectively. Okay? So you ready to meet the first character? Okay, here we go. So this is the over-demanding executive. This is the guy who wants everything and he wants it now. This is the guy who says, come on, guys, I need you to work faster, get more done. I need quality to go up. I need you to be more predictable. I need you to do all of this with no risk and absolute certainty. And come on, guys, why can't you just work a bit harder? And surely you can deliver 6 months worth of work in 3 months. Like, you know this guy, right? You've all met this guy. And often we find these guys working in small startups or growing companies. Many years ago, I worked with a startup founder in a very small company who, if you asked them which of these 3 or 4 super important projects or initiatives do you want to prioritize first, he would fold his arms, pout, and say, I want them all, and I want them now. This is not helpful behavior. Worse than that, I worked with a CEO at another startup who had this amazing habit where if there was someone in the team that he didn't like what they were doing, he would come down to their desk and he would bang on their desk and shout at them and tell them all the things that were doing wrong, bang, bang, bang on the desk. And then he would say, wait there, stop for a break, go out to the balcony, smoke a cigarette, come back to the same person and pick up where he left off, banging on the desk and shouting at them. And he would do this every day. This is not healthy. This is a very bad thing. And the impacts on the team here are very serious. We, as Agilists, we want to work at a sustainable pace. We understand the importance and value of working at a sustainable pace. And these guys think the answer to all of our problems is to work crazy hours. We want to build quality stuff, and this kind of pressure can force us to cut corners. So this is very serious. So what are some things that we typically try? What are things that teams typically do? Well, we talk a lot here about shielding the team, don't we? We make it somebody's job to shield the team from these guys. So maybe your product owner or an agile coach or your team manager has to shield you from all the crap. They become the crap shield, all right? You're the crap shield. And maybe you've got a really effective crap shield that holds all the crap up here. And if you've got a really effective crap shield, maybe you can get to the stage where this demanding, shouty executive never talks to your development team. But if that's the best we can do, if that's what we aspire to, if we consider it a success to stop people from talking to each other, that's kind of depressing, isn't it? It's kind of depressing that stopping people from talking to each other is a good thing. And of course, it doesn't work. Like, this doesn't work. If you've got a product owner who pushes a little bit too hard for you to get features into your sprint, or a team manager who says things like, you don't need to write these important tests now, we can add them in later, the chances are you've got a problem with your shield, and nobody wants a leaky crap shield. That's a bad thing, right? So yeah, this doesn't work. What's happening here is that somebody, your demanding executive, is putting pressure on your product owner or your team manager, and they're passing on a little bit of the pain. So once again, as I said before, I don't have all the answers, but here are some tips for things that I think you can do to help make the situation better. Okay. First up, so you need to tackle this problem head on. Okay, you need to be brave, you need to have some difficult and courageous conversations, but you also need to be patient and you need to be persistent. You're not going to fix this problem with one conversation, one meeting, or one slide deck. You really have to be patient. What you can do is make the impact very visible to the demanding executive. So if, for example, your team is very burnt out and struggling, you need to make that visible to the executive. If, for example, the fact that you cut corners in your code in the past is making you slower and making your software more difficult to modify now, you need to explain how cutting more corners now is only going to make the problem worse in the future. But it's incredibly important that you use the executive's language. There is no point in talking about unit test coverage or minute details of your stand-up format here. You have to use the executive's language. You have to talk about the impact on the business, the impact on the team's ability to shift valuable product for the business. So, for example, if you have a very serious morale problem, you need to talk about the cost of losing people and the cost of bringing on new people and getting them up to speed, okay? But it's incredibly important at all times here that you make sure that the exec understand that your goals and his goals are aligned, okay? This has to be the context for all of your conversations. Because at the end of the day, all he wants you to do is ship valuable product for the business, and all we want to do is ship valuable product for the business. Never let this guy forget that your goals are aligned, okay? That's my first tip. Second tip, so you need to be really honest. Talk about trade-offs. So we're trying to build this incredible environment of motivation, trust, and empowerment. But what are the trade-offs? What are the things that we have to give up? What are the things that we have to let go of to build this kind of incredible environment that we want? I had a little bit of a breakthrough with that angry desk-banging executive when I showed him a slide that literally looked like this. Okay? I showed him this slide. And I explained to him that in order to create this environment of trust and empowerment and motivation, he was going to have to give up his personal control over every tiny decision. And in an environment like ours, where our team was changing and growing very quickly, we were delivering complex, innovative stuff, he wasn't going to be able to get the level of predictability that he expected in the short term. And I explained that it wasn't particularly healthy for him to have visibility of what every individual developer was up to every hour of every day. Now, I genuinely thought he was going to fire me when I showed him this slide, but he didn't. He loved it because nobody had ever explained to him that in order to get all these amazing things, there was some stuff that he had to give up. Okay? And lastly, show how this kind of thing will build a success. So there are many, many case studies of companies with amazing cultures and environments of trust and empowerment and sustainable pace that are also hugely successful businesses. Show to the exec that getting this stuff right is a path to building a successful company. Okay? That's the first character. Ready for the second one? Okay. So now we're going to talk about the zealous sales team. Now, when I was putting these slides together, somebody told me that nobody under 35 would get this movie reference. Do you know who this is? Do you know who this is? So this is Tom Cruise playing a character called Jerry Maguire. Jerry Maguire was a very slick sports agent. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So this is the sales team. These are the guys who promise the world to a customer. They promise anything, but you're the team that has to deliver, okay? So they make promises, but then you have to deliver. I can see some people are recognizing this one. So maybe you work for a B2B product company, and they will promise to a customer that you will add some new features to your product just to get a sale over the line. Or maybe you work for a software house, and they will promise to a customer that you will meet some crazy deadline, okay? So these guys. Now, the challenge here is that these guys have targets, and these guys get paid commission. So it's completely understandable that they will do and say what it takes to close a sale because that is how they're incentivized. But they're not the ones that have to deliver on the promises. You are. You're the guys who have to cut corners. You're the guys who have to work weekends. You're the guys who have to deliver features that are actually not that value for the bulk of your users because this one customer asked for it, and we've just got to get this sale over the line, and it's the last time it will happen, I promise, right? This is what happens with these guys. So what do we typically do? So most teams I've worked with who face this challenge, they simply accept that this is the way the world has to be. This is sales. We can't change it. Sales are sales. That's how it's going to be, okay? So we try and set ourselves up to deal with it, to embrace the inevitable. So maybe we leave spare capacity. Let's leave some spare capacity for whatever craziness comes up. But spare capacity is just a euphemism. It's a euphemism for working on stuff that is less valuable than the stuff we should be working on. Okay? Because if it was valuable for everyone, we'd be doing it anyway. We wouldn't need spare capacity. Or maybe we'll ring fence a couple of people in the team and say, right, this month, you two are the guys who are going to have to drop everything when their crazy feature comes in at the last minute. Or maybe we cut corners. We do whatever it takes to get the job done. We work weekends. We write crappy code. We do whatever it takes to get the thing over the line. So these are the things that we typically do, right? So what should we do? Again, some tips. So all of the tips here are about bringing these teams closer together, making development and sales teams feel closer. And I think this is really important. So sometimes you'll hear sales teams say things like, if only our development team was more commercial. Have you ever heard them say that? And this is actually really maddening, because what is it that we're trying to do? We're trying to build valuable product and get it to our users as soon as possible, which sounds pretty commercial to me, okay? So here, what you can do is you can share your experiences. You can talk to them about what it feels like for you to be on the wrong end of this type of behavior. Like the demanding executive before, you can explain that if you cut corners now in your code, it's going to take you longer to deliver stuff for them in the future. Okay? You can show them very clearly all the things that you have to drop to make way for their just one feature, just one thing. And you can try to find shared, mutually beneficial goals and KPIs. Shared goals that you and they can work towards together. So an example of this might be the ongoing happiness or satisfaction of the customers that they are selling to, right? So this is something that they can influence, it's something that you can influence, something that you can work towards together as one big team. And the absolute nirvana here is that if you can get these goals and KPIs built into your sales team's target and commission model, then you're in a very happy place. You can be very successful if you do this. Okay? And lastly, depending on your company, you can actually make fundamental changes to your organizational structure. So in some companies, for example, you might have the situation where you've got people selling specific business capabilities and specific development teams building those capabilities. So why not bring those teams together in one big cross-functional organizational group? Everything here is about bringing teams together. I did say this wasn't easy, right? These are big changes. Okay? Next character. Okay. So this is the centralized technical authority. This is the wise and great Jedi Council that you must go to have all of your technical decisions approved. Okay, have we seen this? Okay. Now, often we think of this as being a problem in big enterprises, but I've seen it in smaller companies as well, where some people retain just a little bit too much control over certain technical decisions. Okay. Often this is done in the name of consistency. We have many teams. We need to be consistent across all of our teams, so we need to make all of our technical decisions centrally. But the problem here is that consistency for the sake of consistency is not always a good thing. And often what's really going on is that this centralized technical decision-making authority doesn't trust the teams doing the work. Okay, and this is not a great place to be for a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, firstly, this just slows you down, right? Having to go to a centralized technical authority to have every decision approved slows you down and stops you innovating. But also, it's just not a very nice way to work, right? We don't feel empowered when we have to get every one of our decisions approved. We want to feel trusted. We want to have autonomy. We want to have control over what we build and how we build it. And basically, we don't like being told what to do. Right? So what are the things that we typically try in this situation? So maybe we just make do with a little bit of scraps of autonomy that we're thrown. So we make some small tweaks, we tinker around the edges of our software, and we're just thankful that we're allowed to make these small changes. That's something that we often do. Or maybe we get permission to have some innovation time. So we get time to try out new technologies and new frameworks in our innovation time, which is really nice. But if there's no way that we can then get these technologies, these successful experiments built into our production software, that can actually be very frustrating. Or maybe we just put in all the hard work to get the approvals we need from these centralized technical design authorities. Maybe we write the documents, we fill in the forms, we make the presentations, we work really hard, and we get the approval just to implement that framework that we already knew was going to make our technology better anyway, which just feels like a giant waste of time, right? So what do we do? So again, in this situation, the first thing we do, depending on how deeply entrenched this is in your organization, you may need to start slowly and carefully. So find a change that you would normally have to go to your technical design authority for approval for. Try to find something that's not too big or not too risky in the grand scheme of things, and say that you want to do an experiment. And the experiment that you want to do is you want to experiment with the team doing the work, making the decision without approval from the design authority. You're not changing the process, you're not bypassing the process, you're just doing an experiment. It is much harder to say no to an experiment than it is to a change. And then when your experiment is a massive success, which it will be because you'll make sure it is because you're awesome, you can then do another experiment, maybe something a little bit bigger, okay? And then another one, and before you know it, what's happened? You've proven that your team of highly skilled engineers can actually make good technical decisions. Who would have thought it? So another approach is you can go to this great and holy technical design decision-making authority, and you can say, I need your help, oh great and holy and wise one. Please come and work in my team, okay? So you can ask these people to come and join your team for a few weeks or a couple of months or whatever. And what will then happen is they will come into your team and they will see that you're actually competent, intelligent engineering professionals. And to let you into a little secret, sometimes these people have big egos and they like being asked for help. So they get to feel like they've imparted some wisdom to you along the way, and you probably will learn something from them, okay? So that's another approach. And then once you've done these things, so once you've had a bunch of successful experiments, and once you've built trust with your technical design authority, This is when you go for the big win, okay? This is when you go in for the kill. And what you do then is you start to talk about principles, okay? Instead of getting permission for specific changes to be made in a decentralized way, start to talk about categories or types of technical decisions that teams can make in a decentralized way. So at Treatwell, where I work, in order to help with this, we came up with something called the pyramid of consistency, okay? I know it's not a pyramid, it's a triangle, but we called it a pyramid. We're sticking with it, I'm sorry. And so the way that this works is that things towards the bottom of the pyramid are things that we feel it's very important to be consistent across all of our teams. There are good business reasons for that. I should say this is just an example to illustrate the concept. This is not a complete pyramid for Treatwell. And things towards the top of the pyramid are things that we don't care about centrally, what choices teams make. So what this example is saying that a team would need a very, very good reason to deploy something somewhere other than AWS, but we don't care what IDE you use. And what this allows us to do is identify categories of decisions that can be made locally by individual teams, categories of decisions that need to be talked about with other teams, and categories of decisions that need approval by higher design authorities. It's just a framework for helping us with these principles. And if you have an organization where centralized decision-making is too deeply entrenched, then what you can do is try to move things up the pyramid over time. Over in the cloud, we have other technologies that we're evaluating that we don't know where they sit in the pyramid yet, okay? It's just a framework, but whatever you do, whatever framework you come up with for making more decentralized technical decisions can be very powerful. All right, we've got one more to go. Okay, so meet the controlling project management office. So this might be your PMO. In some companies, this might be called portfolio management. In other companies, it might be finance or whoever controls your budgets, okay? Again, you know these people. I can see a few nods. So these people, they love plans, they love metrics, they love reporting, and they love budgets. They want to know what's going to be delivered. They want to know when it's going to be delivered. They want to know how much it's going to cost. They want to know how much value it's going to generate. They want to know when that value is going to be realized. They want to know how much your actuals are deviating from your plan. And because many companies do budgeting on an annual cycle, they want to know all this stuff 12 months in advance, okay? And often these people worry about dependencies. So they worry about the fact that if you don't finish absolutely everything on time, then this team won't be able to start their stuff on time and the whole spreadsheet will come crashing down, okay? And they want to know everything that's going on. They want to know everything that's happening in your team in minute detail all the time because data gives them a feeling of control. The problems here are very obvious. Because these people like to track and plan everything to great detail, they don't like change. They don't like deviating from a plan. This is very obviously a problem for Agile. But also the other thing that happens here is that because we're not allowed to say to these people, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, we guess. And then we treat these guesses as if they're facts, and our business makes decisions based on these guesses as if they're facts. And that's a problem. That's quite dangerous. So what do we do? So what do we typically do in our teams to try and deal with this? So somebody, maybe the product owner, maybe a project manager, and some teams I've seen the Scrum Master do this, which is kind of insane, just has to deal with it. So they write status reports, they update plans, they provide metrics, they report on actuals versus budget, etc., etc. And as I said, sometimes we just guess. So we're not allowed to say to these people, I'm sorry, I don't know what we're going to deliver in 6 months. And actually, the fact that I don't know is a good thing. So we guess, which is bad. And I think we also scaling frameworks. So we have Agile scaling frameworks. This is not my area of expertise. I think Dimitri is talking about this right now in another room. So if you want to know about scaling frameworks, I'm sorry, you've come to the wrong talk. But I think one of the things that these frameworks try to do is to mediate between the needs of the big enterprise centralized portfolio management approach and, on the flip side, the Agile delivery team. How successful this can be, I have my doubts. I don't know. My suggestions. So what I would say is that I think of all 4 of the characters, this is the hardest. This is the most difficult to deal with, because in some cases, you're talking about fundamentally changing the way your the way your company operates, the way the company measures itself, which is a big deal. This is hard. So I've had some success by simply challenging assumptions. Ask the question why a lot. Why do you need to know this right now? What decisions are you going to make based on this data? What would happen to the company if you didn't have this information right now? Would you rather I told you I don't know when I don't know, or would you rather I guessed? You can make some progress here by pushing back on these assumptions. Secondly, you need to design your organization for independence. Now, there's probably a whole 45-minute talk just in this one point, but if you can design your teams such that the need for cross-team coordination is minimized, then the need for central management and monitoring is greatly reduced. So if you have specific business goals or business capabilities or KPIs or even P&Ls, try to align your development teams to those specific business goals and make sure that everyone in that team has all the people and skills that they need to be able to deliver everything for that business goal without being dependent on other teams. So what you're trying to do here is minimize the need for cross-team coordination and therefore for red tape and bureaucracy. And my last point is more of an observation than a tip. So this is uncomfortable. This is really serious, difficult, uncomfortable stuff. In truly successful, progressive, agile organizations, there will be jobs that used to exist that no longer exist. We have to handle this very carefully and very empathetically, and we have to find ways, other ways, for these people to add value to our business. Okay? So that's the 4 characters. We've met the 4 characters. We've met the overzealous sales team. We've met the controlling project management office. We've met the demanding executive, and we've met the wise technical design authority. All of these people left to their own devices can do or say things that have negative impacts for your Agile team. And as Agile coaches and Agile practitioners, we need to work to resolve this. Before I finish up, time for a shameless plug. We are hiring at Treatwell. Of course, we have absolutely none of these problems at Treatwell. I've never encountered any of these issues, never. All of my examples are from old jobs. But seriously, I think that we do have one of the best environments I've ever seen for success with Agile. The hair and beauty industry is actually really interesting. It's one of the few industries that has not yet been digitized. I personally find it incredibly motivating that we might be building one of the last great online marketplaces. We're doing really great work. We're solving complex technical problems. We have a lovely, lovely team, including the guys here today. And we have an amazing company culture. So we're hiring for a bunch of roles in London. Here in Vilnius, we're looking for developers, we're looking for engineers. Also, hot off the press as of yesterday, I'm also looking for an Agile coach to work with the guys here in Vilnius to be my counterpart for the Vilnius team. So if that's something you're interested in, that is something we're looking for. If you would like to find out more, you can go to treatwell.com/tech. You can talk to any of the guys here or me in one of the breaks. You can email me, colin@treatwell.com. And whether you're interested in joining Treatwell or not, please follow us on Twitter, tech@Treatwell. My final tips, just to finish up. We need to be bold. We need to be brave. We need to be prepared to have difficult and challenging conversations. We need to tackle issues head on, but you need to be respectful and empathetic. Remember, everyone that you're talking to, everyone that you're coaching and influencing has a different perspective, and everyone is trying to do their best. Be a good storyteller. Use successes from elsewhere. Paint pictures of how things could be or how things can be. Use successes from elsewhere in your organization or from other organizations. We have a fantastic community of helpful people in the Agile world. Use them. And lastly, be patient. This is difficult. Changing behaviors is hard and it takes time. You need to be patient, you need to be persistent, but please don't give up because the rewards when we get this stuff right are huge. Thank you.
And time for questions. So we got already few. This is not a question. Okay.
Okay, good question. So the question says, could you share some real-life examples of who should be the shield for the Agile development team? Usually for dev teams, the Scrum Master who should take that for POPMs. Good question. So in an ideal world, we shouldn't have to shield the team, okay? So as I said, we should work towards a situation where we don't have to shield the team because we work with all these negative influences from outside the team to change their behavior so that we no longer need a shield. Okay, this is the goal, this is the dream, but this is hard. So the reality is that in the meantime, you will need some kind of a shield. And I think the honest answer, so I'm going to dodge the question, is that it depends on your team. Okay, and it depends on what the nature of the shielding is. So if the impact on your team is that it's affecting your ability to do Scrum and do Agile well, then probably that's the Scrum Master's job to shield, right? But if the impact on the team is that you're delivering things that are less value, or it's impacting the team's ability to maximize the value of what it delivers, in that case, it probably should be the PO. So it depends a little bit on the situation, it depends a little bit on the organization, but what we need to work towards is a situation where we no longer need a shield.
Okay.
Good question. So I'm very lucky. So the question says, do you have a real-life example of working and dealing with controlling PMOs? So I'm very lucky that I've spent the last few years working with smaller organizations where this is less of a problem. This is a theme that came up quite a lot when I was interviewing a bunch of Agile coaches. So one of the real-life examples that one of the Agile coaches I talked about, they had exactly this problem, all of the issues that I described earlier with management and tracking and budgeting. And the very powerful and big success that they had was that they moved their entire company budgeting process and planning process from annual to quarterly. Now, that sounds like a small win, but in the grand scheme of things, that's quite a big deal because they were only having to forecast and plan at 3-month intervals instead of 12. What we do at Treatwell, where I work now, is we don't have a big controlling PMO, but we do have a small team and who look after, I guess, our portfolio and our strategy. And what they focus on, instead of our plans and our roadmaps and our actions and what our teams are delivering, what they focus on is the business metrics and the KPIs that we're seeking to influence. So every 3 months, they look at the key KPIs that we have across the business, and they look at how we're doing in terms of influencing them, and they help us to make decisions about whether we want to invest more or less in those areas. So it's a very lightweight approach. Of course, yes. Can a developer be an Agile enemy? Absolutely. Of course they can. But that's not what my talk was about.
Probably it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Good questions.
And something went wrong.
Something went wrong.
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much. What metrics do you use to measure Agile Coach work performance? I don't like using metrics to measure anyone's performance. I think that metrics are always a proxy for the underlying intent of what we're trying to measure, right? And metrics as proxies are imperfect. So I'm not a big fan of using metrics to measure individuals' performance. I think that having said that, at Treatwell, we try to have each person have a KPI. That is our number one metric. That is not what we're measured on in terms of performance, but it's meant to be a goal to help us decide what to focus on and what to prioritize. My personal metric, my KPI that I use to help influence what I work on is the team happiness and engagement across the tech team. So the happier and more engaged the tech team is, the better I feel that I'm doing my job. Sure.
So imagine that you are having a bunch. Thank you. So imagine that you are leading a group of agile coaches and they're in different locations, so you cannot really see them work on a daily basis. So how do you know that what they're doing is effective?
So, I mean, I think I always start from a position of trust, right? So we've hired skilled, professional, mature professionals that we trust. But I think you can ask the teams that they're working with. There's a very obvious way to do it. So ask the teams. If the teams are becoming more effective, then they're probably being more effective. But I think a different question you can ask is that regardless of whether we are effective or ineffective, what we want to do is become more effective. So if you've got the best agile coach in the world who's smashing it out of the park, is doing an amazing job, you still want to get better. And if you've got a terrible agile coach who's failing and struggling, you also want to get better. So for each agile coach, we should for each person in any team, identify the things that we can do to be better and do them, and then identify the next thing and just keep improving.
Okay, and one more question.
I think I kind of just answered that. Have I answered that? How do you know that Agile Coach is delivering value to team and organization? Well, if the team is becoming more effective, then they're delivering value and adding to the organization.
Okay, and our time is almost over. So please give your scores to presenter.
Thank you for the great questions.